There's a kind of evil in this world that doesn't come from hatred, greed, or malice. It comes from something much quieter and far more dangerous. You've seen it before, in the way people obey absurd orders without question, in how entire societies sleepwalk into disaster, smiling as they march toward ruin. It's not madness, it's stupidity, but not the kind you're thinking of. Not ignorance, not low intelligence. Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who was executed by the Nazis, meant something far more terrifying when he spoke of stupidity. He believed it was not a defect of the mind, but a moral sickness of the soul, a collective blindness that spreads when people surrender their ability to think, not because they are dumb, but because they are afraid. And here's the part that hurts. You and I are not immune. The mirror of stupidity. Let's be honest for a moment. How often do you stay silent when you know something is wrong, just to keep the peace? How often do you nod along with something absurd, not because you believe it, but because it's easier? That's where it begins. That's where stupidity takes root, not as ignorance, but as obedience. Bonhoeffer wrote that stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice. Because evil always needs accomplices, and stupidity, the kind that hides behind conformity and convenience, provides the perfect army. The stupid person, he said, is content in himself. He cannot be reasoned with, persuaded, or enlightened, because his stupidity isn't about logic. It's about submission. It's what happens when a human being stops being human, when they outsource their thinking to the crowd. The birth of collective blindness. Think about it. Every atrocity, every collapse, every mass delusion in history began not with monsters, but with normal people who refused to think for themselves. Germany in the 1930s wasn't filled with sadists or psychopaths. It was filled with citizens who were tired, scared, humiliated, and desperate for someone else to tell them what to believe. They weren't evil, they were comfortable. And comfort, Bonhoeffer warned, is the womb of stupidity. When people stop struggling to see clearly, when they surrender the painful responsibility of independent thought, they become instruments. They stop asking, "Is this right?" and start asking, "Is this safe?" That's when the dangerous kind of stupidity takes over. The one that smiles while doing harm. The one that justifies everything by saying, "I was only following orders." The psychology of submission. Psychologists have tried to explain this same phenomenon in modern terms. Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments in the 1960s revealed how ordinary people, not sadists, not soldiers, would electrocute a stranger simply because an authority figure told them to. They didn't think, they obeyed. And it's still happening today. We live in an age where thinking has been replaced by echoing. People no longer need to believe in anything deeply. They just need to signal that they belong. We share opinions we haven't formed. We repeat outrage we don't understand. We let algorithms tell us who to hate and who to admire. We are drowning in information, but starving for thought. Bonhoeffer foresaw this. He wrote that stupidity is not an intellectual problem, but a spiritual one, a choice to renounce one's inner freedom. And once people lose that freedom, once they stop standing in the tension between good and evil, truth and lie, they become capable of anything. The comfort of the crowd. There's something seductive about giving up your mind. It feels safe to let the group think for you. It feels righteous to say what everyone else is saying. It feels moral to believe what everyone else believes. But that comfort comes with a cost. Your integrity, your soul. Plato called it the cave. People chained to the wall, staring at shadows, convinced that the illusions projected before them were real. If one of them tried to break free and see the sunlight, to see the truth, the others would attack him, not because they were evil, but because they were comfortable in their ignorance. The stupid person, Bonhoeffer said, is often self-satisfied. They mistake conformity for virtue, passivity for wisdom, silence for peace, and the more they are surrounded by others who think the same way, the more certain they become. That's how stupidity multiplies, socially, exponentially, invisibly. The modern mask of stupidity. Today, stupidity no longer looks like ignorance. It wears a suit. It posts motivational quotes. It calls itself pragmatic, balanced, or reasonable. But underneath, it's still the same. A refusal to see, a fear of standing alone, a quiet surrender of the mind. Scroll through social media, and you'll see it everywhere. People convinced they are thinking, but only recycling what others have told them to think. People proud of their open-mindedness, but terrified of questioning their own tribe. People shouting slogans about freedom, while following scripts written by others. Bonhoeffer saw this too, how stupidity thrives in times of social upheaval. When people feel powerless, they cling to certainties, and the louder they cling, the less they see. That's why he believed stupidity was not just a danger, it was a symptom of a society in moral decline. The courage to think. So, what's the cure? Bonhoeffer didn't think you could argue a stupid person out of their state, because stupidity, he said, cannot be conquered by reason, only by liberation. The liberation of the soul, the moment when a person dares to stand apart from the crowd and say, "I will see for myself." That's the real rebellion. To think, not in the way your ideology tells you to, not in the way your friends expect you to, but with your own mind. To risk being wrong, to risk being misunderstood, to risk being alone. Because the truth, by definition, isolates before it unites. Nietzsche called this the loneliness of the free spirit, the price of seeing the world as it is, not as you were taught to see it. Most people will never pay that price. They will choose belonging over clarity, comfort over consciousness, and they will call it wisdom. The hidden evil of good people. Here's the uncomfortable part. The stupid person isn't always a villain. They can be kind, polite, helpful, even moral in the superficial sense. They might donate, volunteer, pray, smile, and still perpetuate immense harm. Why? Because their morality is borrowed. It comes from authority, not awareness. This is why Bonhoeffer's insight is so terrifying. It means that evil doesn't need malicious people to survive. It only needs obedient ones. It needs people who prefer order over truth, reputation over conscience, silence over responsibility. And that includes us. Every time we look away from an injustice, every time we mock the one who asks difficult questions, every time we cling to slogans instead of reflection, we are part of the mechanism. Not because we're bad, but because we're afraid. Afraid to think, afraid to see. The final reflection. When Bonhoeffer wrote these words, he was imprisoned by the Nazis. He could have stayed silent. He could have survived. But he refused to play along with the stupidity of his time. He chose clarity over comfort, truth over safety, and paid with his life. He once said, "To act responsibly means to live in the light of truth, even when that truth isolates you, even when it breaks your heart." That's the essence of what he meant by resisting stupidity, not to fight others, but to awaken yourself, to think again, to feel again, to remember that the human soul was not made to obey, but to see. So maybe the real question is not, why are people so stupid, but when did we stop thinking for ourselves? Because the moment we stop asking that question is the moment stupidity wins. Bonhoeffer's warning isn't about the past. It's about now, about us, because every empire, every movement, every generation believes they're immune to the blindness of their ancestors, until it's too late. The terrifying truth is that stupidity doesn't destroy societies by accident. It destroys them by convincing everyone that nothing is wrong. So, if you've made it this far, pause. Ask yourself, when was the last time you changed your mind? When was the last time you questioned your side? When was the last time you stood alone for something true? Because maybe, just maybe, the only real act of rebellion left is to think.